Alright, hello everyone. Tonight we're back at the Workbench. We're turning down the volume on some of my scale trains and my other sound locomotives just because after going and working on the Superior Scenics layout, you've got a background right behind the locomotive a good chunk of the way around the layout, and there's a concrete floor, concrete wall, and an uninsulated ceiling. There's no tiles, it's just straight to the floorboards. And so the acoustics in that room are a lot different than in my basement here, where I've got a finished basement. I've got carpet, there's a drop ceiling, so it's all kind of insulated for sound a little bit. And it's not quite as loud as it is in an unfinished basement with concrete floors, concrete brick wall, and then straight up to the floorboards and the beams. So I'm going to turn everything down, and I'm turning it down way more than I anticipated because I got my little workbench here. And so I'm going to show you guys real quick what I'm doing to turn these down. So let's spin the camera around and get to work. Alright, so all I'm doing is I'm going through the manufacturer's directions from scale trains for these locomotives, and it looks like they're pretty consistent with the master volume being CV63. So what I do is I grab my throttle here, we go over, and I use program track because I want to know what it's already set at. Now I know what this one is, but just to show you guys, you select your CV, it's going to show you what it is. They come from the factory at 128, which is great for show. It's great for, oh, I just got this thing, and you show it off, and it's nice and loud. But if you turn it down, it often sounds more realistic. It sounds a little bit cleaner and clearer, and your speakers will sometimes last a little bit longer, especially if it's a smaller speaker. And as you go through and program your locomotives, you kind of need to adjust this by ear for your layout, where you're operating, the size speakers you have, the different brands, etc. So like John's CNW-9 that we put sound in a couple weeks ago, that's got a tiny little cube speaker in it. And at full volume, it's probably as loud as this thing is at like 10 or 15. So we're going to keep it here. So I'm just going to hit enter. So after selecting your CV, you can put in whatever you want. So 10 for me. So we're just going to re-enter it. There we go. Clear it out. And now we can check it. Not very loud at all. So that's going to be perfect for switching and operating on the layout at his place because, like I said, you're usually operating, most of the trains are against a wall or some sort of background of some sort. Mine's a little bit further away from it, so there's not as much, sound bouncing around. So this will be really nice. So I've got these three I've done. I've got a few more up there to do. And next we're going to add some ballast to that ballast hopper. Alright, so what we're going to do right now is I've got some ballast here. This is Superior Scenics fine and ultra fine ballast for Pink Lady. Very appropriate. And if this works out, I'll probably do a few more cars. And all I really have, I don't have straight up Elmer's glue, which is what I would normally use. And this is what I have. This is the pre-mixed stuff, about 50-50 mix. Maybe a little bit lighter than that. From actually doing ballast work on the layout. I'm going to see how well this sticks. If this doesn't stick, I'll just wash it out and then I'll go back with straight up Elmer's. So we're just going to put a little bit on here. Oop. Looks like that hasn't quite mixed yet. So we're going to go like this, make sure the rest of that water gets out of there. This stuff has sat for a few months, and so it's separated, so I've kind of mixed it back together. The stuff in the straw obviously didn't mix, so now we should be relatively good to go. I'm not going to go crazy because I don't want it dripping out the bottom of the car. Just enough to put a layer on here. Okay, and now we're just going to spread it all around here. Get in all the nooks and crannies. We want to make sure that any place that has an opportunity to stick, that we give it that equal opportunity to stick. And then anything that's left later, we can just clean up with some warm soapy water. But I want to make sure I don't have anything on the top of the car here. So I'm just going to dab that off. And you can clean that up later with some warm soapy water and a wet rag. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to take our ballast. And we're just going to tamp it, let it sort itself out a little bit. Just gonna tap it around a little bit and knock it off the edges here. There, we got a full ballast load, full ballast hopper. So now what I'll do is I'm going to let this dry. While it's drying, I'm going to go through, return to programming my locomotives here. We got a little bit of a clean spot. We don't want to see that gray fake ballast load that Bowser put in here. No offense, Bowser, but that just looked awful. And it would have been nice if it was more removable for people to put in their own loads, but hey, we'll make it work. That doesn't look bad. So I'm going to just let that sit here. I'm going to continue programming, and that's probably going to be it. I'm pretty happy with that. Like I said, I'll go back with a warm washcloth and let this sit, and then when it's done drying, I'll probably let it dry for a couple of days. I'll just tip it up, tamp it a few times, and anything that isn't sticking, I can either patch up with regular glue, or I can wash it off, start over, or I'll just fix it up a little bit. But I think next time what I'll do is I'll go with a little bit finer ballast. This is a mix, and it doesn't look bad, I don't think. It looks better than it did, but I think I'd rather stick with the finer, but this does give a nice little texture to it. I think it looks pretty good. So I'll just go back, knock off some of the stuff on the sides, just so it looks a little bit nicer. You can see on the ends here, we're a little bit stuck. I'll clean that up, and we'll be good to go. Alright, so I just wanted to go over a quick tidbit about programming here, especially when you're using something like the Loc programmer, where it can get pretty advanced pretty quick. So I've got everything. For those of you who don't know, I've got these Protothrottles, which are a unique operating throttle. It's not a system. You can use it with any system you want. You just have to set it up the right way with the right receiver. But all of your throttles need to be set up the same. Otherwise, every engine's going to operate different with each throttle. So this is the first throttle. This is what I do all my programming with to double check everything, because every throttle I get is programmed after this one. My black one, my gold one, my green one, they're all programmed after this guy. All the programming is modeled after this guy. This is the first one I had, and I've only changed it once or twice in the couple years now that I've had it. But every time I finish programming a locomotive for the Protothrottle, I test it with this guy. And I've had some unique hurdles with this 9550 Norfolk Southern. I had this weathered by Rob Arsenault of Weather My Trains up in Canada. I absolutely love the weathering job. I just wish the couplers wouldn't changed out. It's something I got to do and weather them up to match, but that's no biggie. But I didn't save the original file, and that's like my number one rule: save the original file. I thought I'd already programmed this guy, and I didn't. So I started messing with the programming for the sound and everything else. I'm like, wait a second, where's the momentum? Because I'm going through a momentum program right now, where I'm changing all the momentum in my locomotives to have more momentum, so you have more time to play with the throttle and the brake. And it was at that moment I realized I hadn't done it yet, which means I probably didn't have the original file saved. Of course, I look, it's not. So everything I'm doing to this thing is completely by the seat of my pants now. And I was having trouble with the lighting, and I'm like, man, I wish I could start over. And so I got distracted. I came back, I had a minute to cool off, and I looked at it again. And I couldn't get the headlight to work this way or the dimmer to work that way, and this would only work in one direction. So I started thinking about it logically. okay, go back to the loc programmer, go back to the function settings and the driving characteristics and everything. So I go to the function mapping. I'm looking, like, I scrolled over a drop down menu and selected not F something else that's on. So I looked through for other things I might have bumped, and of course there's two other things. You gotta be careful when you're moving around, because if you scroll over something, you could throw your adjustments way out of whack and never notice it. And the next thing I noticed with the function outputs, because I put my dimmer, front and rear, which is controllable by the knob, as F12 and 13. F11 is the rear headlight bright, but F12 and 13 are front light number 2 and rear light number 2, and I set those to a brightness of 1 with the dimmer. Well, from the factory, it comes on with Rule 17 reverse for the front. And so when I had this in reverse, I'd have no front dimmer. Somehow I selected it, or it was selected, I don't know. But, yeah, it was my goof. After I had that figured out and I caught those other two things, it was as simple as could be. So now it's working the way it should be, but when you're working with the loc programmer or any of these programming systems, even JMRI, you need to make sure that you're not accidentally changing anything you don't want changed. Make sure you always save the original file and then do all your programming. Always save the factory file. Always, always, always. I've been pestering Scale Trains enough every couple months, I forget to do it, and so I've got to get back onto it. I'm working with them right now on number 5000, one of my KCS engines. That's the ditch lights aren't working, and one of the sanding lines wasn't put on right, and there's a bunch of other stuff in the way. I don't know if I want to get into taking that shell apart to do all that. I might just get the ditch lights working and call it a day, and then when I get it weathered, I'll have them see if they can fix that. It's not that big of a deal to me. I've got 2 other KCS engines I can run in the meantime, but I want to get these guys done probably tomorrow night now. I gotta get to bed. I just got off of work at 7. It's already 10 after 9. I want to go spend some time with my girlfriend, so this is probably going to be it for the night. But I got 3 more engines to go, and then I'm pretty set. Another thing I've updated is some of my programming on the side of my throttles here, so I usually forget which one's which, and I just start pushing buttons. But the top right latching button is F5, which is the DPU lighting for most modern locomotives, and then it's the class lights on other locomotives. So let's say I'm running my Dash 9s into Tier 4 with a SD40-2 or a SD45. Well, if I activate the DPU lighting, I'm going to activate the class lights. So it kind of works out a little bit. Not that I'm going to do that very often. I'm probably going to keep the modern with the modern when I go to operate and everything. And not that I plan on doing a lot of DPUs and getting into the lighting and all that. I'm not that big into it, but in case I do. And then F4 is the dynamic brakes. Previously, F4 or this button would have been for like the beacon, the strobe, accessory functions like that. But I've elected to just go with those with the locomotive starting instead of going by the prototype, looking up the prototype road number and when the cab, when did they come on and all this other stuff. I'm getting away from that. I'm simplifying things a little bit to add a little bit more flavor and variety when I'm actually operating. So now my CNW SD45, that comes on with F8. So as soon as you start the locomotive up, boom, that light is on, and that's actually really handy for me because now that I'm turning the volume down, just sitting here, I don't hardly hear it. It's super quiet, but when you get 3 or 4 of those going in a room with 10 people running, it makes a difference. You know, you only hear it 3 to 6 feet away from you, and when it's on the other side of the room, you don't hear it, so it's kind of nice. And then it's when you start it up, you see the beacon. Sorry, I totally got sidetracked. You start it up, you can see the beacon going. So on the SD45s and the engines they have that, that's very nice. I still have to update my Milwaukee Road SD40-2s. I think I'm going to sell my Milwaukee Road number 3000, Scale Trains SD40-2. It's probably got 10 to 15 hours of runtime on it. It's in great shape. I don't like the E-Bell. And I've got the new SD40-2s coming, so I'm not too worried about it. So if anyone's interested in that, make me an offer. Otherwise, that's going to be it for tonight on the Workbench. I hope you guys are having fun. Have a great night, be safe, and don't forget to keep working on that railroad.